Welcome back to Cal Park Rose. Jason and I are fresh off the segment discussing the Trevor Bauer suspension. In this last segment, we're going to be talking about the fact that there's going to be a changing of the guard um, regarding the leadership in the NCAA. Feels like it's been a while since we talked about any sort of infrastructure stuff related to the NCAA. And it seems like now is a perfect time to address this now that Mark Emmert is retiring after 12 years of being in charge of I call it the league. It's really just a big ass conglomerate. Like it is a business, whether people want to acknowledge that it is or not. It absolutely is a business, and he's effectively been running it for more than a decade. Um, and so there's been a lot of discussion about what does that mean for the NCAA, who's going to be taking over um, for Mark Emmert when when it's officially his last day, and he has a big pizza party on his way out. So, Jason, what are some of your initial thoughts as there's going to be a change in leadership?
Well, you call it a retirement. I definitely am not going to call it that. Um, Indications, which makes sense, indications are that basically he and the NCAA Board of Governors agreed, quotations, that he would step aside or step down, however you want to call it. And I say that particularly because not long ago he had his contract extended through 2025. And this is public knowledge. I'm not sure people realize this, but Mark Emmert made or makes, over $2 million a year. So I doubt he was going to just willingly walk away from that. So for whatever reason, they agreed upon that he would step down, step aside. So definitely not calling it a retirement. I get your point though, but yeah, definitely not going there. My initial thought was, um, even though some people say it shouldn't be surprising, kind of surprised because of that contract, and two, I know he liked working there. But three, it seemed like there were plans in place, either instituted by him or spearheaded by him at the behest of others, that he was going to be carrying out going in. And obviously, this is based off of me last being employed there under the NCAA this past November. So I'm kind of surprised in that regard. However, if you kind of look at some of the more recent things that have gone down, you can definitely see probably why he was asked to step down when it comes to the situation that happened with this past basketball tournaments, when it comes to the workout facilities down there between the men's and women's. And that got a lot of attention, as it should have. The disparity there, while the men's had everything at their disposal when it comes to weights and stuff like that, where I think the women had like yoga mats and like 10-pound dumbbells, and that was it. I know he definitely caught hell for that, as he should have. Uh, even though I will say, like any major company, stuff that happens within the company isn't the fault of the president. Like it's not they're not the ones out there saying, "Oh, we'll give the men this, give the women that." No. So Mark Emmert was not the one deciding that and making that happen. However, that's the price of being in charge. You're going to get blamed. The company itself is going to get blamed for everything, but because you're the president for the company, it's going to fall on you. But part of the problem was that whenever it was brought to his attention, and of course he got in front of the media to explain, basically it wasn't a good explanation. It was really more defensive, making excuses as opposed to, now, obviously they still fix the situation, but it was more of his media explanation of it was, again, more of defensive, which didn't need to be. And I will also say that a lot of the employees there weren't fond of that situation either, as they shouldn't have, and I'm sure most people weren't either. Then you also have the situation. I don't want to just put it just on the Kansas situation, but obviously their school was being investigated for almost 3 years, and then all of a sudden their team wins the national championship in basketball, and then after the fact or whatever, around the same time, they get hit with punishments. So just kind of the timing of certain things when it comes to investigation taking forever and then not really meaning anything. Obviously, the NIL situation, having to go to court and NCAA fighting it to happen, but the court saying no, this is going to be a thing, dog. So you guys need to get behind it. Several states were doing things, and it seemed like the NCAA was only taking their eventual stance on NIL because they were forced into it by the Fed courts and states governments. So all that to say, in this last year or so, just not good looks for Emmert, and I'm sure again that's some of the reason why the board and him decided to agree, quote unquote, again for him to step away. The one last thing I'm gonna let you jump back in. That people might have seen the date saying that he's not going to step down until June 30th of 2023. So, of course, people are saying, why is he waiting a year? Why didn't he just step down now? Well, just from what I know from working there, they likely would have some sort of plan in place for his replacement. They don't want the spot to just be gone and open and not filled by anybody. Because I also have to imagine too, according to a lot of sources, which makes sense, that it's going to be a new direction of the NCAA, right? For all this NIL stuff, potential move into the current century, as many people are saying. So they want to pick the right person. So technically, even though the date says not stepping down until June 30th, 2023, if the NCAA figures out what plan they want to make when it comes to the direction of the NCAA, and they have somebody ahead of that date to replace him, then he will step down at that time frame. So it could be 6 months, could be the full year, whatever. But that's why that date was mentioned, so the NCAA has time to formulate their plan and find and recruit the next replacement. I have thoughts on that, information on that as well. But those are my initial thoughts, sir. What say you?
I do think that, to your point, that the NCAA is going to be different. Name and likeness has changed things for better or for worse. The old ways, some of those are going to erode. Some of those, some people feel they need to, and it you will need someone in charge of the NCAA. Number one, that make sure all of this corporate money doesn't walk out the door, which it won't. But also, the NCAA is trying to do everything in their power to hold on to, this gold mine that is, college basketball, college football. But they also have to evolve with the times as the appetite of the average college student to be involved in those sports. To your point, Jason, yeah, name and likeness, that could have been, they suppressed boosters for so long. And so now it seems like, hey, the NCAA is so woke because you're actually allowed to get deals. It's like, yeah, it's not nearly as progressive as it sounds when you think about the fact that they've been suppressing individuals from effectively profiting off of their gifts anyway. So whoever's in charge of this thing in a year, while they're trying to do their succession planning, will have to be mindful of that. So those are my initial thoughts.
Now, I will say this. No matter what decisions the NCAA makes about anything, they're never, ever, ever going to make 100% of the people happy with whatever they decide, no matter what it is. Even when it comes to NIL, as many of positive, you mentioned for better or worse. For many people that think it's for the better, there's equally amount of people who think it's for the worse. And I took a lot of those phone calls. People think it's ruining the game, it's killing amateurism, your favorite term, things like that. Even when it comes to the transfer portal, people are lauding that, praising that, giving kids the chance to actually transfer and blah, 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 and all stuff like that. People were hating that as well. So no matter what, they're never going to make anybody make 100% of the people happy. Whether it's Mark Emmert, the presidents before him, whoever comes after him. That's never going to happen. And it is what it is. So whoever is the president, when it comes to whatever decision you make, you can't necessarily worry about trying to please the people because you're going to piss off half of them and make the other ones happy. So you have to make whatever the best decision is for college sports and the college student athletes. And then that's the end of the story with that. Regarding the replacement, potentially, I talked to some of my former cohorts at the NCAA, and a couple of them kind of had the same sentiment or hunch again that who the next president may be. It would not shock me, and I'm not saying that this is what they're. I'm not going to say they're going to pull Joe Biden saying that they're going to be doing this, like gunning to do this. But it wouldn't shock me if the next president of the NCAA is either a female or someone of color or both. Definitely, well, also throw additional in that, it wouldn't shock me if it was somebody who in generally was younger. Mark Emmert, 69, obviously when he took the job, he was 57, which isn't old, no. But I think it's going to take somebody who has a different mindset of, like I said, NCAA is looking to come into the current century. Well, you have to have somebody with that mindset that's looking to do that same thing.
Right.
And I will say from personal experience, particularly the reason why I got fired, some of the old mindset is a reason behind that. So again, change is good. But along with the speculations, personally, when I first heard this, my first thought of the replacement was going to be Dan Gavitt, who, if people don't know, he is officially the senior vice president for for basketball. Not to mention, obviously, he has that pretty high position for an important spot over basketball, which obviously, as I mentioned before, is very important to the financials of the NCAA. But not to mention also, he is someone who's very experienced when it comes to talking and dealing with the media. That's also one knock on Mark Emmert, that he didn't really do well with the media. He didn't seem comfortable doing it. Dan Gavitt's not going to have that problem. Now, I'll say I don't know if he wants the job, but I'd have to say he's probably the number one candidate based off what I know from working there. I found articles, kind of speculating on who top candidates are. And of course, there's pretty good ones, a lot of female candidates, which is great. One good thing that I saw suggested was whoever they hire should be somebody who has not been a former school president, like a college president, which Mark Emmert was. They're saying that get somebody to move away from that, which I can see the benefit of that. But there is one person of the candidate list who fits that bill, who's not a former college president. She's a minority. She's a female. And she's somebody that actually saw speak in person at the NCAA. And that would be one Condoleezza Rice.
Called it.
Yeah, exactly. So she's not saying she's going to get the job or anything, but she's among one of the top candidates. And even though it may sound funny, because people may not recognize this, they recognize she may not have a whole strong connection when it comes to sports. I mean, which is what it is, which in a way could be a good thing. But clearly, she has experience dealing with the media, clearly. She has connections, obviously, to being a part of a White House staff, so she can handle that pressure. If she can handle that pressure, she can handle anything going on with the NCAA, for sure. Now, where her mind will be when it comes to bringing the NCAA forward into a new century, that I can't answer. I don't know. But she's probably one of the more prominent names, probably the most prominent name amongst the top candidates for the role. So it will be very interesting to see who is a replacement. I'm still not betting on it, obviously, NCAA, not betting on this. But, it wouldn't shock me if it's Dan Gavitt, to be honest with you. But, again, if you want to try something different, all the previous presidents have been white males, not knocking white males, but, again, something different. And we know the NCAA is looking to be progressive. And whoever they hire is going to be somebody who's qualified. So again, we're not looking to hire somebody just to hire somebody in particular. So there's that. Terrence, what again? Not say you have to name any names in particular, but what are your thoughts about who the replacement should be? And now, when I say who, I don't necessarily be named, but I just mean in general when it comes to the type of person who should be the next president.
The type of person who should be the next president of the NCAA should probably be someone who believes in free market principles. I'll start there.
How would that benefit the NCAA or student athletes?
Well, we already know how it would benefit student athletes. And student athletes have been beating down this door before Mark Emmert was working on his exit strategy last year. Shout out to the Kansas City Jayhawks, by the way. That was
Yeah,
great. That was great.
yeah. That probably. I don't want to say that was a nail in the coffin, but that might have got an extra nail in somebody's hand and say, "Oh, let's start hammering this right now." Yeah, that was not a good look, bro. Not
Yeah,
good.
I wish that it was almost as if that guy was already on. He was already on vacation, as far as this job was concerned. So yeah, that to me that's a core tenet for the next person in charge of the NCAA, because those free market principles have allowed the NCAA to effectively, become the financial behemoth wonderkind that it is. Um, so you were asking the question how it would benefit the NCAA. It's in its best interest to keep as many talented collegiate players as it possibly can for as long as it can. And if they don't, then those kids will simply find other avenues to play other than the NCAA. So, and I believe that keeping those avenues for revenue generating purposes, that's in the NCAA's best interest.
So, and maybe this is my confusion here. So, when you say revenue generating avenues for the NCAA, are, I'm assuming you're not referring to NIL, correct? Or are you?
I'm talking about the fact that NCAA really didn't have a choice but to just embrace that. They've been fighting it tooth and nail the last 20 years.
Agreed.
But the writing was on the wall. They were going to lose.
Agreed.
So they don't get extra credit. They and if they're not careful, you it's no different than who knows what the National Basketball Association is going to come up with relating to their one and done rule. You may see more players like one of the Ball brothers going straight overseas and just opting out of the college experience altogether.
Well, they tried that. The not Lonzo, obviously, but the other two. Yeah, they bypassed the whole college thing, went overseas and played, and obviously Melo. Yeah, obviously he's in the NBA. So I agree with you on that in that regard. There are going to be certain people who feel like they want to buck the college system because they want to make money, right? And that's essentially why those two Ball brothers did that. They don't want to go to college. They want to make some money, get that experience as well, which obviously helped Melo. I gotta say that. But I also think though now that whether it's begrudgingly or not, I think now those players are more so instead of going overseas potentially they're going to stick with the NCAA route because they can still get that. Certain players, not all, because they can still get that NIL money at least, which is not coming from the NCAA by the way, or schools themselves. But yeah, so that might bring more kids to the NCAA route as opposed to going elsewhere. But I do agree with you. Yes, potentially kids are going to find those other avenues. Certain kids that they don't want to go the college route at all anyway. I don't know if the NCAA can really do much about that no matter what they do. But I do think that percentage of those kids are going to go the international route or the G League route. I still think it's going to be a smaller percentage because there's not going to be that many kids that can actually do that talent wise. And also, we're focusing a lot when it comes to basketball on this. But keep in mind, the NCAA is, and I know you know this, but the NCAA is way more than just basketball, folks. There are some people that don't know that.
They got football too.
Well, to some degree, yes. But yeah, some people you think you'd be surprised how many people say, "Oh, NCAA, that's basketball, right?" I'm like, there are 24 other sports with the NCAA, yes, but basketball is one of them, yeah.
And EA
So,
Sports only had like two of them. So just saying.
with the NIL stuff, that's back now. EA Sports is back now, back in
Thank
the
you.
game.
Thank you, Ed O'Bannon.
Exactly. So So I don't think the NCAA can really do a whole lot to lose certain college athletes. Again, we're only talking about a small percentage of those who could really take other routes outside of going the college route. Because again, keep in mind, we're not talking about basketball. Is other sports as well. So, but honestly, basketball is the one people think of as being the most popular, and there are other avenues to go down. Football, what else are you going to do? Where else are you going to go? What other avenues are you going to take right out of high school besides playing in college to get you ready for the NFL? So, but I do agree the NCAA needs to be very progressive while still keeping the focus on making college sports for the schools underneath their umbrella to make it better experience for the college athletes. And whatever that may entail, that still stays within the guidelines of the current bylaws or whatever they may become, which we don't know. I don't foresee a whole lot of change on that, frankly. But even with the transfer portal, things like that people, may mock and try to destroy, small things like that and other measures that I will need to go to or mention on this podcast. But there are things that people don't see that the NCAA does do for the student athletes. But no matter what, NCAA is going to be looked at as an evil corporation. People want to say, let's get rid of the NCAA, which to that I always say, then what's the alternative? In which no one ever has an answer for that, by the way. So, but no matter what, NCAA is what it is. They are the governing body for that particular group of college sports. They just need to do better and be better.
Yeah. And that'll be up to whoever is going to be taking over this gig in the next 6 to 12 months. So,
Condi Rice. No, I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know. I have no clue, folks.
All right. That concludes our segment on Mark Emmert, 12-year tenure within the NCAA. And with that, we'll wrap up the show.